In an intimate relationship, hopefully you're with someone who is a peer and who it's two black belts together who are iron sharpens iron. To me, if you feel like someone's mother, it's probably an indicator that you are far more than them and probably shouldn't be in an intimate relationship with them.
Ultimately, when you look at how people perceive men's time, it's like finite, as if it's diamonds. Whereas when you look at how people perceive women's time, the belief is that it's infinite, like sand instead of diamonds. And that's ultimately the belief showcases how unequal we view each other's time as. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Today, we have an event recap. This is episode number 137. Do you feel like your partner's mom sometimes? It's a triggering title, potentially. But that's for a reason.
Maybe validating as well. Before we jump into this episode, we want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions, who produces this show and I believe 50 others. It's growing. So thank you. Personal growth, personal development, self-improvement, mental health, all the things that I wish I had as a child are being poured into the world through our production company. So thank you for producing this show and so many others. Sweetheart, ladies first, what is your intention for today's episode? And that's all I've got. My intention for today's episode for our listeners is to, like I said, at the event, Relationship Talks 39th event, which happened to be last night, was to help them walk away or scroll away from this episode with, at the very least, a little bit of validation for their experiences, and at the very most, some interesting insights that will help them reflect in their relationship so that they can grow together instead of apart when it specifically pertains to feelings around being held back in their relationship.
So that was our event name, How to Not Be Held Back in Your Relationship. We talked about a whole bunch of things at the event. This is going to be an event recap, but the main thing I asked Emilia before we hit record, what was the biggest takeaway for you? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So at the beginning of the event, I had invited a wonderful individual. I started coaching this person's husband. Keep it anonymous. This person's husband probably 4 or so months ago. And then she came in to group coaching. And then she wanted to do one-on-one coaching in tandem. And by the way, the event yesterday was built around the idea of fair play, the idea of invisible work, the idea of cognitive labor, the idea of equal partnership. We're going to define all of those in this episode. We're going to try to define all of those. Yeah, please. So we defined them all in the event. We're going to define them all for you here today. But ultimately, we had a warrior yesterday. A warrior is a term that we use in our virtual events for someone who's going to go into battle first. They went and they conquered, and they have already been through a lot of this stuff. Now, you never fully get through it, but ultimately, my client, who I coach this married couple in business coaching, I do bi-weekly with the male, bi-weekly with the female, and it was very fascinating. So this is what I shared at the beginning of the event. I said I unintentionally triggered this woman because I saw him more as the business owner than her. When they both own real estate together, they own a bunch of rental properties. And she said, hey, I just wanted to reach out. She was very kind about it. It wasn't an attack by any means, but she reached out saying, hey, I think I'm a little insecure that I'm not seen as a business owner like he is, even though we both do just as much work. And I said, totally understand. My bad. That was unconscious. And let's do an event on that, essentially. And she said, well, there's this documentary called Fair Play that I think you and Emilia would love. Emilia and I watched it. We did love it. And it was very, very, very validating. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of women out there feel like they have to constantly pick up the pieces and tiptoe around their male counterparts when it comes to housework. And here's the thing. Way back generationally, maybe some of this stuff might have made sense when one partner wasn't working and the other partner was working. In this case, more women are in the workforce now than ever before in human history. I do believe it's beyond 50% from the last time I researched it. And so now there's a lot of women out there that feel like they have to take care of the kids, the pets, the home, all these different hats they have to wear, and they have to be the breadwinners too. And there's a lot of stats in the documentary about that. But shout out to this couple for bringing this up, because I told Emilia, I said, we will always be equal partners. Now, I can't fix cars, you can't cook, we're going to be fine. I'm joking. No, but ultimately we have split. We own 3 businesses between the two of us. We have a household, we have pets. And I don't ever want you feeling like my mom. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm your dad. And we want to be equal partners where our time is equally valuable. To me, that makes perfect mathematical sense. But apparently I'm a weirdo in this. And I'm excited.
Well, one of the biggest things that happens, and we see this in relationships, I actually have a client that's coming to mind right now where we've had so many discussions where it has come to ultimately this pinnacle of, I feel like my partner's mom. I feel like I have to pick up, do the laundry, do everything for our household. And the realization comes through, it's like, oh, well, my partner's been enabled their whole life because that's what he saw the mom doing to the husband, aka his dad. And so this perpetual cycle just continues unless we interrupt it. And that's the thing, a lot of the burden is placed upon the shoulder of these women in relationships that we end up coaching, and conscious singles and couples that come to us saying, like, I'm going mad because I'm having to do, or I feel as though I have to do XYZ for our household. And without me, things would just completely collapse. And there's a big reality that's underneath that. Without all of the inputs and efforts, aka the invisible work, the things to define it.
So the 3 terms are invisible work, cognitive labor, and equal partnership.
Right. The things that are unseen and unpaid work that are needed to run a home, in like a household, a relationship, and a family. All of that, where if you were really to pay someone to do that work, it would be beyond 6 figures.
Which one is that, love?
An example of this is women tend to take on 2/3 more of that work, regardless of whether they work outside of that home.
And
this
again,
one
statistically,
invisible work.
Yeah,
okay?
Invisible work was that.
So a lot of the relationships in the documentary, they start to unzip as a result of couples not taking seriously how much this invisible work that's being put in again and again, and the cognitive labor, which is the mental effort put in around the clock to make sure that things work, right? And that things don't fall into complete disrepair. Like laundry, cleaning, carpooling, logistics, et cetera.
This is the stuff that you're thinking about. Whoever in the event we talked about, sorry to interrupt you, babe. In the event we talked about, whoever is more future oriented and more aware in a given arena, they are able to anticipate challenges in advance, and therefore they're thinking more ahead. So you've been way more proactive in certain things, and I've been more proactive in other things. So I talk about when I first got with Emilia, it was sleep and fitness that I was way more proactive, macros, calories, all that stuff. She's been way more proactive with our pets, which we're going to get into. But ultimately what it comes down to is cognitive labor is the labor no one can see.
Right.
And a lot of being business owners too, and this is a really powerful concept for any business owners that might be out there, most of the work, people think, oh, well, you own the business, so everyone else does the work. No, I'm thinking 24/7, 365, how do we grow and scale this company? And it never shuts off, even when we're on trips and things like that. So the cognitive labor is a big thing for business owners as well as women.
Absolutely. But what we find, people come to us asking for help, for guidance, for resources, and for strategies to be able to help improve the relationship that they're in, or at least give relief to the challenges that they face. And this is what we really talked about in the event last night, which was, what happens when there's so much cognitive labor and so much invisible work as a result of unfair and unequal relational dynamics. Like that starts to unzip the quote unquote trust, the love, the intimacy, all the things that people want in relationships. And that's really what starts to crumble and collapse. And in the documentary, like I was saying, it's what 75% 5% of couples end up divorcing over. It's, you might have heard us say this in the podcast before. It's never about the bowl. It's always about something that's really underneath that's not being seen by the other partner.
It's never about the dishes. It's never about the bowl. It's never about the bath mat. It's never about the shower not being clean. It's never about the laundry. It's about something deeper. And one of the things that just came up for me is imagine, and again, we don't want to overdo the male-female thing,
Definitely
but
there's stats.
There's stats here that matter. Imagine a bachelor pad versus a home with a magnificent, empowered woman in it. There's a huge contrast. Now, it's really important, sweetheart, to understand that everyone has different standards in relationship talks coaching and in this podcast in our company where we help couples flourish together. There are different standards that are held by each partner. So when Emilia and I got together, she had higher standards than me in certain regards, and I had higher standards than her in certain regards. We're just going to use, again, for pets, she has much higher standards than I do for the way the pets are treated, how we play with them, how we feed them, the way in which they're trained. I had never had cats before, the way they're developed. I had much higher standards in sleep and fitness and those kinds of things. And we've integrated standards. So she's helped me come up and I've helped her come up, which is exactly how you grow together, not apart. Now, if you think about the honeymoon phase where there's a bachelor and another individual that live separately, these problems don't arise yet. And this is why a lot of people say, make sure you live together before you get married. Because when you live together, the conscious love language that we're talking about here today, and we talked about this in the event, we have a PDF for the new listeners called 25 Conscious Love Languages. One of them is called Lifestyle Preferences. This is the one we're going to zoom in on. So the lifestyle preferences get amplified a ton once you live together. And before Emilia and I lived together, she would always say, I'm so scared to live with a man. Understandable if you look at how a lot of men live. Not all men, but a lot of men. And now I understand after watching this documentary why you were so scared. Because I said to you, sweetheart, I'm going to be the best roommate ever. We're going to be fine. I'm respectful. I'm clean. I'm constantly trying to add value. If anything, I've been the one who's been doing more invisible work in my relationships. So at the end of the day, it's very, very important for all of us to understand this, particularly any men listening.
Well, one of the things that I want to kind of share on that and add to really revolves around how ultimately, to this topic, to this intention, to the event that we did last night, that a lot of the feedback that we got from people who were there said, my gosh, right? You had a client reach out to you, say that this was one of the best out of all the events that she's been to.
She said it is the best.
This
is the best. And
right.
She's been to at least 20 of them out of the 39.
So like the validation that the people in the room felt and how like we had people asking for the slides afterwards. Like it was just really wonderful, right? Again, at minimal, feel validation through this conversation, but at maximum, let's see if we can kind of pull some of these things apart for us to be able to construct a better, brighter future together with our partners so that we can grow together, not apart. One of the bigger issues underneath all of that is that we don't know how to talk about this. And that's what I had shared with you as one of my biggest breakthroughs, through all of this and getting the feedback from the community. And again, bringing back up that client that I have in mind, that it's like, well, when you actually live together, there's all of these conflicts. That client of yours
is a female, yeah?
Yep, she's a female.
And you don't coach her husband?
I don't. No,
okay.
He doesn't have the humility to even step foot anywhere near something like that.
Perfect. So that's a great example. Okay, so high level, what do you think of this client's husband in terms of equal partnership?
Here's that thing. That's what I was just going to say, babe. The equal partnership isn't even a remote concept that would ever go near in terms of a topping point. So actually, the belief that's underneath this that we got into last night is that his time is more valuable than hers, which is what the documentary really, really recognizes. That was so, I would say, really sad, where when the research was done for this documentary, and why, it's a lot of listeners might have clicked on this episode is because ultimately when you look at how people perceive men's time, it's like finite, as if it's diamonds. Whereas when you look at how people perceive women's time, the belief is that it's infinite, like sand instead of diamonds. And that's ultimately the belief showcases how unequal we view each other's time as. And so this partner, his belief is that he should be served and, that his time is more important than his partner. And so she finds herself having to be the default of picking up the laundry, picking up after him, etc.
From?
The our call with Alan and Emilia was just incredibly valuable. it was really cool to see that in just one session we were able to go so deep and to cover so many topics, and without going too much into the troubles, without getting depressive or negative or anything like that. And it was just amazing to see that at the end of the call we were able to hop off the call with way more resources and way better equipped to build trust and to resolve our conflicts more effectively in the future than we were to begin with. So we got a lot of value from it, and way more than we were both expecting. Not because we had low expectations, but because they really over-delivered.
Yeah, and it was really just great to be able to chat with someone and just connect with another couple that's really interested in, growth and becoming better people and becoming better partners. So it was just really fun to actually be able to connect with someone that's really invested in each other and the relationship and everything.
Yeah, they felt like really good friends that happened to be very wise.
Exactly.
So thank you guys, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
So think about this person that you don't know him personally, but you know him through a client.
Yeah.
Where do you think this stems from? Because I know a lot of this is cultural too.
Yeah, actually, the culture of this relationship, the male, is very patriarchal, Portuguese. And so in Portuguese culture, and these are clients' words, not mine, it's all about the men. Everyone exists on the earth to serve the men. And that is like, men are the center of the universe, and women are meant to pick up after them and are meant to serve the male. Like, that's the reason for their existence. And I know that it's not just Portuguese culture where that is the belief.
Okay.
So why I mention that is because what does that do when it comes to if that's a belief, right? How does that actually ripple out when you do live together, right? All of those lifestyle preferences start to butt heads, and then women start to feel as though they're their partner's mom, picking up after them, doing the laundry, doing all the things that in an equal partnership or in fair play, it would not matter.
So real quick, everyone listening or watching, it's time to hold the mirror up. We're not here to mess around. We're here to uncover uncomfortable truths, okay? Comforting lies are for the birds. We're here for uncomfortable truths. Everyone assess their relationship and ask themselves the true question and answer it honestly. Does your partner feel like an equal partnership? Do you, listener, believe that your time is of equal value to your partner, regardless of who makes more money? And number two, and more importantly, probably, based on who's listening to this show, does your partner feel that way too? Unconsciously. The problem with this is not a conscious thing.
No.
So there are some people, I'm gonna keep this anonymous, but there's certain people that I'm around that are so entitled, I kind of want to punch them. and I don't even know if they know that they're entitled. They just grew up very taken care of.
Enabled.
And I didn't. And again, there are certain things I was enabled into, but I don't have that scumbag entitlement. There's no like the world owes me, whatever that is. And for some reason, people have that, particularly men, and I just can't. So everyone has to assess right now if their partner or themselves have inflated self-worth. Do you think the world owes you something? Because I think that's really what this comes down to. So in the documentary, there's someone who I call a lug. I don't know what his name was. Seth. Okay, Seth is the partner of this person, Eve, who wrote this book and created this documentary. And I call him a lug. He looks lazy to me. He looks kind of entitled. He obviously has become more aware and started to get his stuff together, so good for him for that. But also, I joked at the event, I said, him taking out the trash from start to finish without her having to remind him is a lot like me being pumped my car has 4 tires.
Yeah, he shouldn't require a standing ovation.
There should be no celebration for baseline.
Yeah.
And so for me, sweetheart,
I think you should be grateful to have a house, a roof over your head.
If anything, I feel like I'm on the opposite end where I am. Okay. So thank you for that validation. That I'm trying to value my time more because I think I might be under on this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everyone out there watching or listening, you need to assess. I know we got to go soon, babe. You need to assess whether or not this is happening in your relationship. Is there an unconscious belief where your time is less or more valuable than your partner's? And if so, there's an empowering belief that we created in the event that I would love to share with our listeners right now, if that's aligned.
Yeah. So I want to define equal partnership before I do that. This means each person, individual work needs and interests hold equal weight. And it's because, for example, ultimately the perspective on time is that not one partner, regardless of what you had mentioned, right? Not regardless of what you mentioned, but what you had mentioned was regardless of who makes more money. Like even if you make less money than your partner, your work needs, interest, and time should hold equal weight. So
that's the difference between a peer.
Yes.
What's the difference between a mentor and a mentee? The mentor's time is more valuable because they have more experience and a higher personal development set point, and they are more growth oriented.
Right.
When you're in an intimate relationship, it should be peer to peer. It shouldn't be, it's like with pilots and co-pilots. And I also found out there's chief and there's captain and there's all this stuff. And the idea here is, if I'm a black belt in karate, I should be mentoring Emilia if she's only a blue belt. Neither one of us are, but hypothetically. Whereas in an intimate relationship, hopefully you're with someone who is a peer and who it's two black belts together who are iron sharpens iron. To me, if you feel like someone's mother, it's probably an indicator that you are far more than them and probably shouldn't be in an intimate relationship with them.
Well, here's the thing that one of the warrior in the event actually shared. She had said, she's like, well, before, what I learned is that men aren't really trained in some of these domestic household things. And she had said, her words, that's not an excuse. And I absolutely echo that from the hilltops, because of the fact that it's the incompetence, right, to not really know, using our pets
so
as an example.
We have a triad that Emilia came up with right before this conscious couples recording. The first one was incompetence, the second one was insecurity because of that incompetence, and the third was lack of humility,
aka arrogance.
Yes. So incompetence, insecurity, and arrogance, that is the triad of disaster right there. The triad of disaster. Yeah. AKA you're going to basically be tiptoeing around your partner and doing everything for them.
Exactly. You're going to start to feel like their mother. And ultimately, one of the biggest roots here is that, like, our men, our dads showing up and encouraging their sons to pitch in. Like, I want everyone that's listening who feels like a mother maybe, or has felt that way to their partner, can they look back at their experiences, the men in their households, the worlds, the people that raised them, were they taking an active role, just like the mom, to ask, maybe the daughter, hey, can you come learn this folding technique? Like, I remember, for example, my mother encouraging me to learn a folding technique of sheets, but like, where was my brother in that conversation?
Yeah.
Was my dad encouraging him to go learn that folding technique, or was he more encouraged, or just completely like disengaged from that, right? So I think it's an equal responsibility in all of this, the systemic issue that's at hand, to encourage the men of the world to feel less incompetent by getting them trained in a lot of these things. And it starts with awareness. And then where they're not trained, do they have the insecurity? The answer is yes, there's insecurity there. And that's why this conversation will trigger a lot of men and they'll villainize us for this.
Which needs vulnerability.
Yes.
And this is why when Emilia said, I need you to step up with the pets, I said, sweetheart, I never had cats. I have no freaking clue what I'm doing.
Yep.
I want to step up. I just suck at this.
I just don't know how.
And you're the freaking cat whisperer. So you think...
Which I didn't know, because that's just normal, right?
The unconscious competency.
Right.
This is called unconscious competency. So what that means is Emilia is so good with cats, she doesn't even know how good she is.
Yeah.
That's like Michael Jordan being like, asked, how do you dunk? And he's like, what do you mean? You just jump and do it.
Yeah.
It feels like that a little bit with the pets.
And I'm sure so many listeners probably feel so good at doing this cognitive labor and invisible work that they don't even recognize.
That it's happening.
Yeah.
And then you and I get in numbers and mathematics, you're like, slow down. And you're actually good at math too. So I want to make that clear. But at the end of the day, if your partner is incompetent, they most likely are insecure about it too. And if they're arrogant, that's the trifecta of tiptoe and eggshells.
Which is what this client that I mentioned, it's like, man, that is trouble. And I've told her point blank, like,
so
you will forever be his mother if you allow that, if you tolerate that, if you continue to enable this. And she's like, I know. I'm like, so what's the work that we're doing?
Nice.
And it's all about actually focusing in on making sure her needs are met, right? Vulnerable expression and communication. Her partner's a little bit of a narcissist
Courageous
and emotionally immature, developmentally stunted in a specific regard. So courageous communication, but also having realistic expectations of what she can expect in that relationship and making sure that her needs can be met outside of that relationship, because it's literally not possible given how arrogant her partner is.
My goodness.
So she's a different case, but for most people who might feel like they're their partner's mother, it starts with that vulnerable communication, at making sure that your needs are being expressed and vulnerably communicated to your partner. And perhaps you might have to hold up a mirror to your partner. You were super humble where you were incompetent and insecure. Most people aren't, especially when it comes to this topic. And so someone might be listening to this and saying like, shh, I have to be the person to hold up the mirror. Yeah, that might be the case.
Let me give this example. So one time I asked Emilia, I said, hey, have you seen my water jug or something? And she said, did you look yet? And I hadn't. And I said, well, it's easier to ask you. I know you know where it is. And now I understand why you don't like that, because of the cognitive labor thing.
Yeah, it's like, why would I know where it is?
But I also
why
do want you to know
to keep track of your stuff.
It's
right?
not,
exactly.
sweetheart, it's not. But I also would expect nothing less of you to ask me where your jug is too, because I'm so used to just doing that for everyone as well. Right. So I never realized that I'm actually doing all the cognitive labor, not all of it, but so much cognitive labor for my team, for my family,
tracking
for everyone's stats and all that stuff. So now I'm understanding that a lot of us are enabling people rather than vulnerably, courageously expressing like you did. Hey, I know where your water bottle is, but in the future, can you look first?
Yeah.
Because I do think after I've looked everywhere, hey, you might know where it is. Oh, it's in the Tesla.
If
that's
you
right.
happen to see it.
If
Just
you
like I did with you with my AirPods. Like,
exactly.
Hey, babe, if you happen to see my AirPods case, I've been looking for it for a minute.
Exactly.
Please let me know if you happen to find it. See how different that approach is?
Exactly.
That's not me. But what I'm saying is you and I do such a great job at that. And that's language that we've given our clients, where all of this is that so few people have the language to be able to start to get the role playing and the conversation starting around like, hey, can I not be your mom? Can I not put in this cognitive labor and all of this invisible work? Like I didn't want to inherit that.
One last layer to this. I didn't ask, hey, where's my water bottle, expecting you to know where it is.
Right.
That it's an unconscious expectation that you should know where it is. That's where things get really wonky in a relationship.
That's where a lot of women are actually finding themselves in. So I recognize that, love, but we have to be mindful of our listeners too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're in a position like that, courage.
Oh yeah.
Courage. Your partner's life is their responsibility.
Yeah. As are their emotions.
Yeah. And so equal partnership means equal responsibility. It is not Emilia's fault if I'm a mess. and vice versa, by the way.
Yep.
So take full responsibility for yourself, what you say, think, do, feel, and believe, and make sure your partner is also taking equal responsibility for everything they say, think, do, feel, and believe. And more importantly, what they don't say, don't think, don't do.
Facts.
Don't feel, don't believe, right?
Don't
so we are the ultimate responsible for our own life. And I think that that's the belief that we should end with, which is what is the empowering belief, the empowering alternative.
What you just said was the ownership mindset, which was solution number 2. But the empowering belief ultimately that we close with, we referenced just a bit before, which was all time is created equal. Men's time is not finite like diamonds, and women's time is not infinite like sand.
Okay, so you and your partner take equal responsibility and or consciously divvy up responsibility. We talked about directly responsible individuals. So I'm the DRI for kitty litter every week, and the watering hole is what we call it. Emilia is responsible for her things. I'm responsible for my things. We had this 2-column thing that you can do. If she hates dishes and I don't mind them, I'll do dishes, vice versa, that kind of stuff.
And if you want to role play with your partner in a 4-way relationship talks coaching session, we recently did that with a client, and that was actually super, super powerful, meaning try on some language that might be helpful to get this courageous conversation started.
And if you're out there and you're solo and you feel like you are not in an equal partnership and you don't know how to approach this conversation, reach out to Emilia and I. We have helped a lot of people communicate courageously and vulnerably with their partners about these things. I'm telling you, there's massive transformation underneath this. As a matter of fact, transformation is not possible unless you have a courageous conversation. So
Facts.
We appreciate you. I do have to jump, love.
Yep.
Thank you all so much. Our next event is
How to Be Your True Self in Your Relationship, October 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there. Click the link in the show notes to register.
And as always, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.
We'll talk to you next time.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is alazarus88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.